Hello, everyone. This is Helen from MindBE, and I'm really happy to introduce my guest today. Her name is Alex Koster. She's based in Ireland, and she has a new book that has just come out recently, which looks really interesting. It's called Roots and Wings: Childhood Needs a Revolution, a handbook for parents and educators to promote positive change based on the principles of mindfulness. So welcome, Alex. Thank you for coming on. So first of all, congratulations on your book. That's very exciting. I can't wait to read it myself. So can you tell us what inspired you to write this book?
Well, Helen, it started about 4 years ago. Initially, I actually meant to compile a mindfulness program for parents and children. That's how it actually started.
Okay.
I had no intentions of writing a book.
Right.
So after a few months, I think I was writing about 3 or 4 months, and it was just not going in the direction that I was trying for it to go. And it literally took on a mind of its own. It kind of started to take the direction really of, you know, what I really believe is important for children to grow up into compassionate, happy children, really. And I was I became a mom quite late in life. So, I think my second daughter wasn't even born. So, when things come closer to your core, things start to get a lot more important. So it really all changed, all my intentions and what was really important to me. I mean, I was a teacher beforehand, and a lot of the things that I write about in the book were already part of my teaching, and, my beliefs were already there, the basics, of course. But when I became a mom, it started to take on a whole new dimension. So it really started to be my own compass, my own guide for myself. It just focused me on the things that I believe are important for me as a parent and as a teacher, and also what do I believe is very important for children that are growing up in our modern society.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it sounds like a really interesting book. I know one of the things that you cover is how our own and our children's self-esteem is affected by all the competitiveness that we see in society right now. So I wonder if you can just talk a little bit about that and maybe offer some ideas on what parents could do to help their child facing all this stuff.
Yeah, it's one of the things that, especially when, from my experience as a teacher as well, that I recognized in the last few years, there's a big shift in the picture that children have of themselves. There seems to be, there's always been, there's things that have always been there. There's always been peer pressure. There's always been, trouble in school, with different things. Some of the things aren't new. But I think, society has changed dramatically in the last 20 to 30 years. There's huge shifts and changes that have happened, some of them obviously through technology, through the internet, through smartphones, and through, children, I think, are losing a lot of their social skills through these. They're not able to connect properly to themselves and to others anymore, because a lot of connection comes through pressing buttons and through completely not very realistic pictures of others. There's a lot of unrealistic imaging. There's obviously, if you know yourself, when you're behind a screen, when nobody sees you, you're able to say things differently. You're able to present yourself differently. And then you have just the general media as well, where things are presented as perfect, beauty is perfect, everything is flawless. And I think all these things have made a very negative impact on the way children are growing up. And I mean, if you only see the way, if you see a group of teenagers at this stage, you will always see one of them at least to have their smartphone in their hands. There's not a group that you will see that are just interacting normally with each other. That means that there's a completely different perception of what are normal interactions. And I mean, that has then in turn, of course, a reflection of how children see themselves. And it's worrying. It's a worrying trend.
Yeah. I think especially with teenagers. I read some research recently about children, like I think 11 to 14 with phones, and how there's such a huge increase in like suicidal thoughts and anxiety. And they can see, right, oh, everybody went to a party except for me, and it's all flashed in front of their face. And then of course there's the whole anonymous thing where people don't
frightening,
and the bullying and things. So yeah, it really is a difficult time. So what do you suggest parents do or teachers do to help their teenagers or children that are kind of facing those obstacles?
Well, the thing is, you know, I've been really frustrated and frightened and worried through the years, and I was trying to think to myself, you know, what can we do? And I was thinking there has to be legislation, there has to be this, there has to be that. But we all know what usually happens when things are forbidden. They don't go away, they become worse and even more hidden than they are now. So, you know, even though, you know, in an ideal world, I'd love a button just make them disappear again, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. So I believe that the key to everything really in life is education. I really think that's the only way that we as parents and educators can deal with this. And I also believe that we as parents and educators can't close our eyes to the problems anymore, because I think a lot of the time, I know myself, I remember I saw a program on the television a few years ago, and it was a sex education show, especially for parents. And they did a survey in this program. They did a survey in a high school, an anonymous survey where children between, I think, 12 and 16, don't hold me exactly to it, were given anonymous information of what they had accessed and seen on the internet in relation to porn, violence, and so on. And I remember it was actually done very well. The researcher, it was actually the first researcher quit. She couldn't actually handle it because it was so terrible. And then the researcher who actually dealt with it, they put together a movie screening for parents. So they invited all the parents into a cinema, and what the viewer would see was not the actual footage, but the reaction of the parents. And it was frightening. There was crying, screaming, vomiting, running out of the cinema, you know, you name it. So I think that a lot of us are actually terrified of what's out there, because I know myself, I would never, ever put into the computer any word like pedophile, porn, or whatever, because I'd say the abyss that would open up in front of us. And unfortunately, you know, we are grown-ups. We have the skills to decide, okay, I will not do this. This is not for me. But I do believe that children don't have these skills anymore. You know, they have been thrown into this deep water from a very young age. There is the peer pressure. There's the, you know, the ignorance. They're not knowing what they're getting themselves into. So I really do believe that the only way is, first of all, literally to shock parents and educators. They need to know what's going on. You know, they really need to know what's going on, even if it's frightening. And we need to educate our children about the dangers. And I think the most important thing is to be good role models, because we all have fallen into the trap of the media, of the smartphones, of the Facebook, the Snapchats, and so on. So that's the one thing, we need to model good behavior, and we can't close our eyes anymore.
Yeah. Modeling is so important, I think, isn't it? And having those boundaries with technology is really key. So in your book, you also talk about we have so many different types of families and family structures nowadays. So how does mindfulness come in to help in those situations? And can you give us some ideas of what maybe blended families or new families or maybe single mothers, single fathers can do to help their child feel more mindful and more grounded?
I think mindfulness helps in any life situation, really. But as you know, for children coping with any sort of stressful or worrying situation, I think, you know, first of all, I think it's important that parents have probably their own mindfulness practice, you know, so they are going to be able to react mindfully to their children, because I think a lot of the time, you know, we're so busy, there's so many things happening that a lot of the time we might brush off children. I'll be there in a minute, you know, whatever. But a lot of the time we don't actually tune into them, or can't, you know. There's no point us beating ourselves up about it either. You know, there is situations obviously where you just can't, but if we could just keep in mind that we mindfully react to our children, that we realize when they need to be listened to, that we realize, okay, we do need to take a break now of 3 and 4 minutes and really just be with our child, rather than, you know, and especially, I'd say especially if you are a single parent, you know, it's already tough when there's 2 of you, but when you're a single parent, you know, these situations are there much more often, I can only imagine. But I think if we can have our own mindfulness practice to be able to pull ourselves back, even if it's just for a couple of minutes, and react mindfully to the needs of our children. And then there's the, you know, when it comes to a thing of tolerance, for example, you know, you don't want the children to feel left out or different. So I think it's very important for anybody to talk to our children about the differences in our society. Like in the book, there's a chapter about tolerance, and it's tolerance towards anything and anybody. That difference is okay. You know, everybody is different. Like with my own children, I just try to say, you know, difference is fine. What would the world would be such a dull place if we didn't have the differences. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we can do. There's actually a few practical exercises, but it's all about an education about tolerance, and especially in the times we live in, even politically, you know, it's more important than ever, really, you know, to educate the children about diversity and that it's good to be different.
That I agree. It's so important. So just before we come to the end of the interview, can you share 1 or 2 practical activities that parents could start doing with their children or in their homes, maybe today or tomorrow? Because I think a lot of people tend to feel a bit overwhelmed if they haven't. It seems like this big topic and they don't know where to start. So what are just a couple of simple things that parents can do right away to start bringing in this kind of discussion, or this kind of these tools and strategies?
Well, my main focus for the book was actually that I kind of stayed away from the very formal mindfulness practices, even though I have my own mindfulness practice, and I do believe that it's very important. I thought, you know, like you said, a lot of people seem to kind of get overwhelmed, and it's another piece of a schedule to bring into the day. You know, we have enough going on. We don't need another one. So really, it is just to be mindful during the day and connect with your child. You know, to give a little touch, to hold the hand for a minute, sit down, to read a story. You know, some of the things mindfulness, I believe, is in everybody's life already. You know, sometimes people just don't realize that mindfulness is purely paying attention to what's happening at the moment. So. You know, I think if people realize that mindfulness isn't something that's just another bit in their schedule and something that they haven't, you know, I think it's important for people to know that mindfulness is already there with them. And as long as they're able to connect with their child, I know there is kind of more concrete examples of different activities for the different topics, but I think if they just realize that it is just stopping ever so often and look around and just be appreciative of what's around them, be grateful for what they have, to connect with their children, read them a story, have a hug, have a cuddle. I mean, what parents do anyway, you know, they don't need me to tell them this, but you know, it's about just literally integrating it into your everyday, but even for yourself, I think self-care is one of the most important things as well. You know, like, is it a quote by Eleanor Brown, you can't serve from an empty vessel, and it's just so true. You really do. As a parent, I always have this example of the flight attendant, you know, put on your oxygen mask before you attend to anybody else. And I remember in my first flight going, oh my God, this sounds crazy, you know, but it is so true. You do need to mind yourself as a parent to be able to be available for your children, which is so important.
I definitely agree. Well, thank you so much, Alex, for sharing all those ideas, and we'll post your book title and the link where where people can find it. Sounds like a great endeavor, and I hope we can keep in touch and do something in the future as well.
Lovely. I'd love that.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you. Have a good
Thanks
day.
very much, Helen.
Thank you.
Bye.